All right, draft primers 2020. Let's face it, guys. Paul Calvisi, Darren Urban, Odegard. We're not granted access to the war room any year, but this year we couldn't be farther as we're doing the social distancing thing. And you know what? From the distance, I think we've admired the Cardinals offseason in at least one big area. The fact they've been able to check the big boxes, Darren, and seemingly all the needs have been filled. So you can look at all three levels of the defense perhaps and make a case at number 8 overall.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the good things that Steve Keim and his group has been able to do this offseason. You mentioned filling the holes. They got Devondre Campbell to play inside linebacker. They got Devon Kennard to play outside linebacker. They got Jordan Phillips to play on the defensive line. Those were all positions they needed to shore up. And the fact you do it in free agency gives you a lot of freedom at number 8. Now, all that being said, if you ask me what I would like to do at number 8, I know there's a lot of talk on the other side of the ball with a wide receiver or an offensive lineman. For me, and I've kind of held this the whole way, I would like to see them go defense. And there are talented defensive players out there that you could see potentially being there at number 8 that could really help this defense a lot.
All right, now, Kyle, something tells me if you were submitting the card, it would be offense. Give me your thoughts now on what if the Cardinals go defense.
Do I have to, or I can't make my case for offense on the defensive primer? No, I mean, defense also makes sense. That was the unit that struggled the most last year, and you did make some moves in free agency. But I think you're looking long-term. There are spots that you'd like to upgrade. Even though you're in good shape this year, I feel like cornerback is a spot where you could use some more youth. Defensive line is a place where you could use some more depth and high-end talent. Even inside linebacker with Devondre Campbell on a 1-year deal. So there's certainly spots where the Cardinals could be looking closely.
Yeah, let's talk about that real quick. That 1-year deal to Devondre Campbell is conspicuous by the short-term nature of it. It makes you wonder if the Cardinals are figuring maybe, just maybe, Isaiah Simmons, Darren, might fall to them at number 8. I know he tested real well, but there's a guy who, to Kyle's point, I mean, he can be such a dynamic difference maker. He's a guy where if the quarterback breaks the huddle, he's automatically looking for an Isaiah Simmons because he's such an X factor with the ability to play at all 3 levels.
I know for me, Simmons is one of those guys that I've been attracted to as a football player almost from jump here, watching him in the NCAA playoffs and then kind of watching him be talked about as we got into the combine and stuff. And I love the idea of having somebody who's uber talented and so versatile that you could move him around. You're going to have to make an effort to find him places to play sometimes. He doesn't fit in one particular box, but I loved when he talked at the combine saying that, you know, I'm a football player. I'm a defensive player. He doesn't want to be pigeonholed into one position, and he certainly doesn't want to be talked about like because he doesn't have that one position that he can't excel at multiple positions. He talked about how much he studied. He talked about how good he can be covering the tight end, all things that I think would make the Cardinals sit up and take notice. And I think if he somehow made it to 8, and let's not be joking around here, there's a good chance he won't be there at 8. But if he is there, I would think that would be very, very tempting for this team.
Yeah, his measurables are off the charts. There's no doubt about it. I mean, Cliff Kingsbury mentioned one of the first things he said about Devondre Campbell and signing him was the ability to check and cover the tight end. Well, Isaiah Simmons would fill that bill, plus a lot more.
I don't think there's any doubt that Isaiah Simmons would be a big upgrade as far as covering tight ends. But to me, at number 8, you have to do more than be an inside linebacker to be taken that high. So the question in my mind is, can he truly cover slot receivers, or can he truly rush the passer at an efficient level? If he can do either of those things, it makes sense. And if he can do both, he's a superstar.
All right, so Kyle, if forced to go defense, would you be more apt to go defensive tackle? In other words, a Derrick Brown to Javon Kinlaw. Are you more on board with that old philosophy of building a team from the inside out?
I really subscribe to rushing the passer and coverage. So if you believe Derrick Brown or Javon Kinlaw can give you that interior push, can give you that consistent presence in the backfield, getting after quarterbacks, making a quarterback uncomfortable, that's a really big deal in the NFL. And I think they have to evaluate those two guys and feel like, can they do that at an elite level? And if so, it makes all the sense in the world to me at number 8.
Darren, does signing Jordan Phillips, 3 years, $30 million, preclude or make it less likely the Cardinals go that position in the draft?
Not in my opinion. because you need multiple good defensive linemen. I mean, obviously Corey Peters has been your rock for the last few years. You bring in Phillips, but as of right now, Zach Allen, your third-round pick from last year, would, I guess, be your other starter probably. And certainly they're going to need more people. And if you ended up drafting a Derrick Brown, assuming you're taking him at 8, thinking he's going to be this giant difference maker, then all of a sudden you have a defensive line of Peters and Phillips and Brown, and you can bring Zach Allen in the rotation. And as we've talked about a million times too, when you're in sub packages, there's so many different ways you could go if you have 4 quality defensive linemen, because you have your edge rushers and you're going to be playing a 4-man front with those edge rushers. So you can really get a lot of rest. Corey Peters wouldn't necessarily have to be a 3-down lineman. You could figure out who the best pass rushers were among your interior defensive linemen. I just think it would open up a whole host of things for the Cardinals if they were able to get a guy like that.
Yeah, not to mention Corey Peters going into the final year of his deal. Cardinals do work ahead a lot of time. In fact, let's face it, Robert Nkemdiche is supposed to be that guy. So you're looking to fill that in. You look at the division, how the Niners love to run the ball, how they've had that success. Russell Wilson, if you're going to really get to Russell Wilson, that penetration up through the middle is huge. And then, Kyle, there's the whole dynamic of, if you want to talk about a guy falling, what about Jeff Okudah? Didn't run as well as a lot of people thought at the Combine. Some mock drafts do have him falling from the top half of the top 10 to the bottom half of the top 10. What are the chances of Cardinals, if we want to work ahead a year, Pat P's going into the final year of his deal?
Yeah, when you talk about best player available, I think that would be a clear case of it, where if he falls and if they really like the prospect, then yeah, it does make sense, because Patrick Peterson, Robert Alford, and Byron Murphy are your clear-cut starters at this point. But like you said, Peterson's going into the last year of his deal. Robert Alford's going to be 31 this season. Byron Murphy is young but not proven, so there's nothing wrong with adding another cornerback if you think he's a Pro Bowl talent.
And Darren, we've heard Vance Joseph. In fact, this is going all the way back to when he was hired. And it's not unlike Todd Bowles to a large degree. If you can get those 2 elite cover corners out on an island, it really gives a defensive coordinator a lot of options to dial up the other 9.
That was kind of the opportunity, or the thought process when they signed Alford originally, was that they were going to put him and Patrick Peterson out on an island. And then, of course, Peterson had the suspension. Alford gets hurt. That blew it all to heck. But I think that's always been kind of the idea. And I think Vance Joseph would love the possibility of being able to do that going into the season. And if you talk about that in combination of fixing up your front 7 with or without another draft pick, I think Vance Joseph will be much more excited about what he would have to work with this year.
Any other names? I mean, if you're looking at Isaiah Simmons, Jeff Okudah, Javon Kinlaw, Derrick Brown, anybody else worthy at 8 that we're missing, Kyle? Or is there someone you think the Cardinals might target if they trade down, maybe perhaps to the middle of the first round?
How about all the offensive guys? We can't put them in there?
Kyle, is there something you're missing about this being the defensive primer? Can you see the graphic? Okay.
I do think maybe a guy like C.J. Henderson, the second-ranked cornerback, if you trade down. There's some edge rushers more in that 15 to 20 range. So begrudgingly, I'll say there are some other defensive guys we can look at.
No wonder we don't get access to the war room. There you go. That'll be your draft primer 2020 on the defensive side. Everybody now,